I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. All right, so today we are going to talk about 2 shades of pale, the genetic divide in white ancestry. So first, before we do, let's say hi to some people in the building. Adric is first. He says it's on. Adrian is here. He says, let's go. Spain man is here. Greetings to you as well. And he says, greetings to the live tribe. This is the best live tribe on YouTube. So for those of you watching from the clouds, please say hello. You will be welcomed. And shout out to the replay gang, of which Auntie is going to be part of today. She's got plans. Snowman is here checking in from Indiana. Cosmic Surfer TV is here. Good day to you as well. And let's hear it for the Dancing Maggies. All right, so you guys ready to get into it? Here we go.
Woo! We showed up late but made the rules. Rewrote your past in Western schools. Built a nation on your backs, then claimed it all with paperwork and slacks. Moved right in, hey what a thrill. Took your land but called it skill. History books with just our side, and somehow we're the ones maligned. Who me, I'm just trying to help. Put your culture on a shelf, then war it was to set it's mine. I swear I'm colorblind. Me, what did I do? I only made it all about me and my crew. You say oppression, I say oops, but I still run the group. I'm not racist, my yoga teacher's Indian. I don't see color, just your attitude. Hey! I invented democracy. Right! Brought a casserole to your fight. Told your story but made me the light. From pyramids to hip-hop beats, I colonize then take receipts. Gentrified and sing revival. Told your grandma how to thrive. Then cried foul when you pushed back. Why are you so mean to Jack? Who me, I just love your food. As long as it's not too ethnic or rude. I named my kid Dakota Sky, but don't ask me why. Who me, why all this hate? I said slavery was bad. Isn't that great? Let's all move on, forgive and forget. But I still own the net, I feel erased. Like my shoulders don't matter, I mean I didn't own slaves personally. Why can't I say the N-word ironically? Center me in all your pain, then cry foul when you explain. I made woke a dirty word, then asked why my voice isn't heard. I built the stage, I run the show. Then say, hey, why don't you just grow? From Wall Street down to Trader Joe's, we get all a strike of codes. Just doing my best, I turn your protest your best. I kicked on gas, you're sacred right now, I'm up all night. Don't get so mad, I colonize your culture, but hey, not bad, we left, we tried, they gaslight you. It's what white people do.
I hope you all like that as much as I do. Shout out to Adrian Hicks for those lyrics. Aren't they great? Okay, so if we can't poke fun at ourselves, come on now. All right, so today, let's get serious today. We're going to be exposing the genetic truth that there are two different white peoples. If anybody's been around me for a while, you will know that I keep saying this, right? One descended from the Neanderthalic Gothic elites, what we call and what they call the Japheth line, right? And the other from the African Mesopotamian Homo sapien and Denisovan type admixture, which we call the Shem line, okay? By decoding genetic information, the alleles, the migrations, and the cultural behaviors. In some ways, I think this is more important for white people to hear than anybody else. So if you're white, listen up, okay? Let's talk about the origins and the migrations. Spain man is quoting, made woke a bad work, but cry that my voice ain't heard. There's a lot in there, okay? So let's talk about the white lie, okay? So not all white people are the same. They're not, but not in the way that they weaponize that. Not genetically, not ancestrally, not even historically. Okay. So we're going to debunk the myth of a white monolith. Let me get this visual up here. All right. So got to get on the right page here. Okay. Your body, everybody's body is like a giant recipe book, okay? Genes are the instructions that tell your body how to look and how to function. This may be a review for some people, but others it's not. Some of these instructions in your genes, right, affect how much melanin your body makes. That's the pigment, the color in your skin, your hair, and your eyes. Okay. Hi, Ketchup with the Joneses. Thanks for being here. So let's talk about the gene SLC24A5. Just remember the A5, 24A5. This gene helps control how much melanin your skin makes. So people with a certain version of the gene have lighter skin, but it came from farmers who lived in Mesopotamia, who were Afro-Asiatic, where people needed to change how they absorb sunlight to stay healthy. It's a natural adaptation to a new environment. It is a mutation, but it's a natural adaptation. SLC24A5 is the light skin gene from ancient farmers. It helped people survive, not conquer, right? And it's seen across all humanity, regardless of racial classification. This is light skin, pale skin, okay? The second one we're going to talk about is SLC45A2. This is a second genetic, okay? This gene also affects skin color, but in a more intense way, okay? The version that makes skin really pale comes from people with Neanderthal ancestry, like the Gothic tribes in Europe. This is SLC45A2. This is an innate gene. It's an innate gene difference based upon spawning. That as hominids, they spawned in colder, less sunny environments, right? So they had light skin, blue eyes, and special blood types. Okay. This isn't 45A2 is, 24A2. Oh, 24A5. Oh, I'm going to get it right. Is lightning over time. 45A2 is innate. Okay. So SLC45A2 is the pale skin gene without trace of melanin deposits, melanin spread, or melanin pooling. So what those are is melanin deposits are freckles. Melanin spread is your skin tone. And melanin pooling is like birthmarks. Okay, but they also refer to freckles as melanin pools. So they can be called deposits or pools. Okay, so hopefully everybody's caught up, even though I was tripping over my words. Okay, so we have those two genes. Okay, 24A5 and 45A2. 24A5 is lightning over time. 45A2 is innate. Now let's talk about a couple other genes. Okay, there's OCA2. That's on this list that you guys see, OCA2. This gene helps make melanin in your eyes and your hair. Okay. It is different than the gene that makes melanin in your skin. Okay. A change in OCA2 leads to lighter eye colors like blue or green. Okay. So we talked about already how 45A2 causes blue eyes. This OCA2 is different in that the amount of melanin in your eyes changes the color. No melanin is blue. A little bit of melanin, kind of looks like a goldish color, actually makes your eyes green. It mixes with the blue, lack of melanin color, add a little gold, it makes green. Then you add a little more melanin, it makes a hazel color. A little more melanin, it's a light brown, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this gene difference is found in very dark skinned to very pale people, including early humans in Africa and ancient indigenous Britannics. Okay, so this is where we get people who are dark skinned with blue eyes. Okay, so the idea behind that is OCA2 gives people light eyes, but those light eyes don't always mean light skin. Okay. Oh, and Adrian says you're welcome for the music. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so the next gene we're going to talk about, it's these four primary ones, okay, is HERC2, HERC2. There are more we're going to talk about, but these are the primaries. Okay, HERC2. This gene is the light switch for the OCA2. This gene tells the OCA2 whether to turn off or on, okay, dependent upon what is needed, that natural adaptation, right? It decides whether OCA2 will turn on or off, and that affects how dark or light your hair color is, your eye color is. If it switches OCA2 off, your eyes will be very light, like sky blue. So on, the default means they'll be very dark brown, means lots of melanin. Okay. All right. So the key idea here is that HERC2 doesn't make the color. It just controls whether color happens in your eyes or doesn't. No color means they're blue because that's the baseline color of irises. So no eye protection when they're blue. Okay. This also, you see a dark-skinned person with light eyes, right? So there are two different types of white people today. One group got lighter skin because of SLC 24A5, which helped them survive in places with less sun. Okay, if there's less sun, melanin is a skin protectant. Okay, it helps you absorb the sun, it helps you process the sun, it helps protect from specific UV rays. We need certain UV rays because that's how we get vitamin D. But if places are less sunny, then that melanin has to get lighter for us to be able to healthily absorb the vitamins from the sun. Okay. So it helped them survive in places with less sun. The other group got really pale skin and blue eyes because of SLC 45A2 and special control genes like OCA2 and HERC2, not as migratory survival tools, but to address where they spawned. Similar, not the same skin tone, different purpose. Similar look, different bloodline. Okay, and we're going to get into that. So what you're seeing on the screen is Cheddar Man. Okay, and his direct descendant today. So the assumption that Europe equals Neanderthal or light skin equals white supremacy is absolutely false. Okay, and much of mainstream genomes and genomics is guilty of retrofitting later Gothic traits onto older populations like the indigenous Britons. This man is a direct descendant of Cheddar Man. The indigenous Britons were Mesopotamian descended and not Neanderthal hybrids. But they absolutely weren't the only ones, right? But watch the Cheddar Man show that I did on the Britannics, okay? So Cheddar Man, he shows up about 10,000 years ago. He has dark skin, blue eyes, none SLC45A2, no Neanderthal at all. He has the SLC24A5, a little bit of it, not much, okay? Not much. He's dark. He was already lightening due to environment, not due to Neanderthal blood. And he brought that genetic ability from Africa, okay? Early Britons descended from Anatolian Near Eastern farmers, not steppe invaders. That's who's in charge of Britain now. Their depigmentation came from SLC24A5. That's a lightening over time, not the Gothic mutation SLC45A2. Adrian, yeah, it's like chlorophyll except for the hominids. And you know what? You are so right. And I'm actually going to get kind of deep into that. There is going to be a bonus video at the end. So stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned. Okay. So modern claims that Northern Europeans must carry SLC45A2 because they're white are back projecting. They're back projecting Gothic kind of Neanderthalic DNA onto common people, erasing the Mesopotamian agriculture ancestry of that Welsh area and the ancient Britannics. So, hi, Accidental Hero. Thanks for being here. So the bottom line is mainstream genetics is misinterpreting, right? Many published maps of SLC45A2 do not differentiate between the Neanderthal bloodline carriers versus the common people who got pale skin from SLC24A5 lineage. They're just saying if you're white, then it's this one, not that one, right? This means their frequency maps are not wrong, but the interpretation is. A population might have some SLC45A2 now, but it doesn't mean they always did. Okay, ancient Britons, Celts, and Picts were likely carriers of SLC24A5 and not Neanderthal hybrids at all. Yes, the bonus clip is to follow, and it gets deep, so I hope you guys like it. Okay, so pale skin in Britain and the Britannic Isles predates the Gothic conquest and arose from Mesopotamian SLC24A5. The Gothic elites later invaded, bringing SLC45A2, Rh negative blood, and caste systems. But that's not who the original Britons were. In fact, we're going to talk about the Scottish, and they didn't come from Mesopotamia, they came from somewhere else. The first Britons were not white, they were black with blue eyes, and they were not the only ones. So we're going to start with the basics. SLC24A5 is a gene that helps your body decide how much melanin, your skin pigment, to make. The more melanin you make, the darker your skin. The less melanin, the lighter your skin. So we have something called an A111T. Okay, A111T is a specific teeny tiny change in the gene. What it means is just one letter in your DNA code flipped. So when you see things like this, what it's saying is that A flipped to a T, and that where on the genome that it flipped is that space 111. So when you see things like this, you'll know what it means, okay? So, hi Keith, thanks for being here. Not necessarily that kind of goth, but ancient goths. But we do think they may be cosplaying Neanderthalic look. Okay, so A stands for alanine, which is the original version of this gene, okay? T stands for threonine, which is a new version. The change happened at position 111 in the gene, so A flipped to T at 111. The single letter switch A to T changes how your body handles melanin. This is why we call it a mutation, because this adaptation happened. So what does A111T do? So people who have the T version, right, the threonine, make less melanin. They just make less. Okay. That means lighter skin, not from bleaching or like mixed heritage or anything like that, but from this one inherited mutation. If you have two copies of the T version, like two light skinned parents, your skin will be noticeably lighter along the way. Okay. Hi, Leon. Thanks for being here. You said he loved the show on Friday. Oh, yeah. Adrian and I are excited to do a part 2 for sure. If you guys haven't watched, go back and watch. Okay. So, where did A111T mutation come from? Well, it first appeared about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. That lines up with Cheddar Man. Okay. And it was people living in the Middle East and Anatolia, the ancient Mesopotamian region. Now, the people in the ancient Mesopotamian region were from Central Africa. Okay, that's DNA evidence is out there. If you need me to show it, I will show it. I've talked about it before, though. These people were farmers, not conquerors. Okay, they needed more vitamin D from the sun, so their bodies adapted by reducing melanin to absorb more sunlight. That's it, it's an adaptation. The A111T variant proves that light skin can evolve naturally in African or Mesopotamian rooted populations without needing Neanderthal DNA. We see this across the African continent. There are wild variations in skin tone, right? Eye color, hair color, everything. Okay. And well, I'm going to show some pictures in a second. It's an ancestral survival trait. Okay. It originated in the Anatolia and Mesopotamia 10 to 12,000 years ago. That's the first time we saw it. It spread with the Neolithic farmers, okay, back into Africa, into parts of Asia, and into Europe. These are the Homo sapiens. There's some Denisovan admixture. These are not Neanderthal blood types, okay? Okay, so let's look at this. Let's talk about these genes. Leon loves the song. Good. So we're going to talk about some hair and eye genes, MC1R, TYRP1, and the puzzle about red hair. Okay. So red, blonde hair, freckles, and light eyes can appear in dark-skinned people. There are African redheads. There are Melanesian blondes. Okay. These traits occur naturally without pale skin. Okay. So not Anatolia. So let's talk about Scotia. This is said to be a myth, but people in Scotland will tell you this is true. Okay. People in Scotland believe that their history started with Nefertiti. They tell the story, and this is passed down generation to generation to generation. They tell the story that Nefertiti had a daughter named Scotia. And there's a little bit of discrepancy on how Scotia got to Scotland. One is that when the empire fell, Nefertiti and her daughter skedaddled over to Scotland because Kemet owned those islands. Okay. The other is that Nefertiti sent Scotia there. But what doesn't change is that when people talk about how Scotia looked, she had vitiligo or something similar. Okay. She was sent to Scotland or brought to Scotland because less sunlight. Very difficult to live in Africa, in Kemet, in Egypt. There's a lot of sunlight. And if you have vitiligo, especially if you have light eyes that go with it, it makes it very difficult. So the way the story goes, the Scottish people believe, is that they descend from Scotia and the people she brought who had vitiligo into Scotland. This is why they say they have melanin pooling, freckles. Okay, so there's a cute story. So probably true. I tend to listen more to ancient information that's handed down than I do to no, can't be. There definitely were Scottish tribes that came from the angle, call themselves the daughters of Scotia. And DNA studies have found high concentration of Egyptian blood in indigenous people. So kind of backs their story up, right? So freckles and blonde and red hair are not European, right? And they were right. There were black people long before there were white people who came from black people, Neanderthals, which spawned independently. Leon. Okay, so let's keep talking. So now we have this allele that we want to talk about, right? The 45A2, which comes from Neanderthals. Now their mutation is called the L374F. Now remember what I told you. This is an L that changes to an F, right? And this has to do with where they spawned. Okay. So we know your skin color comes from melanin, right? Some people make a lot, which means darker skin, and some people make a little, which means lighter skin. Some people have melanin pooling, which can mean freckles or birthmarks, right? It all depends on your genes in your body's instruction manual. SLC 45A2, guess what? There is no melanin pooling. These people are not freckled. They don't have birthmarks, okay? Because they don't produce melanin. This is why they call themselves the blue bloods and why pale skin was so important. They called themselves blue bloods because you can see their veins through their skin and they're blue. Okay. They do not have any melanin pooling. That's like the biggest number one where white people can tell if you are pure or not. If you're pure, you have no freckles. Okay. If you have freckles, spots, birthmarks, those kind of things, you're impure because you came from Africa. So SLC 45A2 is the gene that tells you, one of the genes that tells your body how much melanin to make. If it's working normally, your body makes a lot of melanin. Normally, default. It makes a lot of melanin and you have darker skin. Okay. If it's mutated, your body makes less melanin, meaning lighter skin. So this L374F mutation, it's a tiny change in the gene. Again, we talked about this. The normal version has the letter L, right? Leucine. And at spot number 374, it mutated to F, which is for phenylalanine. I always say that. I have to stop in the middle. Phenylalanine. Okay. Even though that's spelled with a P, it says F, right? At the same spot. So we call it L374F. That's how we science speak for leucine changed to phenylalanine at position 374. Hold on, I got to clear my throat. Okay. So SLC 45A2 is mutated. The L374F mutation tells your skin to make way less melanin. People with 2 copies of the F version from both parents have very pale skin, blonde or red hair, and blue or green eyes, and no freckles or melanin pooling. That's how we can tell which white people they are. And they will tell us people who have lots of freckles that we are impure and have for a very long time. This mutation is super common in Northern Europeans, all the people with Neanderthal ancestry, and the royal bloodlines in Europe, including the Goths. Okay, so let's go. There we go. Where did it all come from? Let's talk about that. The L374F mutation showed up in Neanderthal humans thousands of years ago in the cold climates with less sunlight. They were born with the mutation. It became, on down the line, the marker of elite bloodlines in Europe. This is why they called themselves the blue bloods, especially among the Goths, the Franks, the Vikings, the royal families, right? Accidental Hero says, I have freckles. Exactly. Because it's melanin pooling. So anybody who has melanin or comes from melanin can get melanin pools. Okay. So some people got pale skin naturally through farming and sunlight. Okay. That's people who came from Africa through Mesopotamia, SLC 24A5. But this mutation, L374F, is more extreme. It wasn't about survival. It literally became the thing about status and mate selection. Was the more pale you are, they were born pale, but the more pale you are, the more important you are. The origin is the steppe peoples, right? The Yamnaya, the corded ware, the Gothic tribes. This is where it spawned. This is about 7,000 years ago when Neanderthals came about. This melanin production and mutation is associated with Rh negative blood, right? Brought that up, I don't know how many times now. Blue-green eyes or blonde red hair, and dolichocephalic skulls. Look at the picture on the screen of Marjorie Taylor Greene. That'll tell you about the skulls. So we can talk about that, right? These elite lineages of Neanderthals is the Franks, the Goths, the Merovingians, the British royal family, and the Ashkenazi Khazarian hybrid people, okay? All of them have this behavior of obsession with purity. They all have a history of inbreeding. They all have a history of this divine right to rule, this divine right to colonize. They all seem to have this exact same thing. But the Mesopotamian cultures, the earth-based cultures in Africa is about spiritualism, diversity, those kind of things. It's not the same. Yes, MTG enters the chat. Okay, so let's look at the chart. Okay. Traits rooted in Mesopotamian or indigenous bloodlines, especially those tied to natural pigment variants, right? This is what comes from Africa. From the continent is gigantic, people. There are all different kinds of people there with all different kinds of hair, eyes, skin tones, all of that across the continent, okay? So traits rooted in Mesopotamia or indigenous bloodlines, especially those tied to natural pigment variants like freckles, were demonized once the Neanderthal Gothic elite began enforcing bloodline purity. They knew you weren't them because of the freckles. You know what they used to call freckles? Witches' marks. Okay. So during the Inquisition and the witch trials, how did they find the witches? Freckles. During the European Inquisition, so the 12th to the 17th centuries, 500 years, folks, church counts searched bodies for marks of the devil or witches' marks. So these marks were freckles, birthmark, it was melanin pooling, right? Women with clustered freckles, right? So you guys have all seen that where freckles cluster together and it makes like almost a bigger freckle or it almost looks like a birthmark, but it's a bunch of freckles together. So women with clustered freckles, especially on the face, the neck, or the chest, were accused of having been suckled by the devil or as a sign of a demonic pact. Why were they targeting freckles? Well, we just talked about it. Freckles are caused by natural melanin clumping or pooling, especially in MC1R mutation carriers. The MC1R mutation, as we've established, appears across both African Mesopotamian lines, dark skin with red hair and freckles, migrated lines, paler skin with red hair and freckles, or blonde hair and freckles. This is Shem's line, the bearers of spirituality, the prophetic witness line. Can't have that, so got to kill them off in the Inquisition. These were the same populations targeted for erasure, conversion, land dispossession, bloodline purification. So freckles became a visible trait of ancestral impurity, especially for women, non-Abrahamic Christian or non-Abrahamic religious traditions, and non-conforming spiritual lineages. So let's talk about the Crusades. Hi, Eddie. Thanks for being here. So during the Crusades, especially in Spain and southern France, both hotbeds for Neanderthals, by the way, freckles were associated with the Moors, Black people, right? The Berbers, Black people, and the rural pagan people. So the indigenous people, they call them rural pagans, the indigenous people. It was pretty much anything non-Catholic, non-Roman. And so, you're a demon. This made freckled bodies culturally suspect. Okay. The pigmentation pattern became spiritual heresy. They're literally trying to make a picture out of how the freckles are, saying that it's from the devil. The same elites who weaponized light skin, right? This very light skin is the thing that makes us more supreme in the master race, right? Also demonized uncontrolled pigment expressions like freckles because they represented the bloodlines that they wanted to erase, absorb, or shame. Auntie is here. Hi, Auntie. So light hair plus freckles is a powerful spiritual lineage, right? These are the druids, the shamans, the midwives. That's who this is. They call them all witches, right? They're branded as witches, heretics, and demons by these religious systems. So, yay. Yay for the Crusades, right? They all want everybody just white as the driven snow. All right. So let's talk about becoming white. There's a lot of freckled people who are now considered white. And I do this because those pure whites, no, they are not pure white. And they're never going to be treated as pure whites. Okay. They think they are, they're not. Many groups now considered white in the West were once explicitly excluded from whiteness. Okay. Over time, they were granted whiteness for political, economic, or assimilationist reasons, often after petitioning courts or aligning with white power structure. Look at who's up there. These people are not white. Okay. And several of them have freckles and spots. Auntie's got lots of freckles, and so do I. It definitely runs in the family, right? But Welsh. Okay. So let's talk about some groups who had to petition or assimilate into whiteness. The Irish, number one. 19th century Irish immigrants were seen as non-white, as subhuman, as ape-like in cartoons and newspapers. Very freckled people, by the way. They had light or red hair, most certainly freckled, right? They were described as the missing link between Africans and Anglo-Saxons. They were blamed for crime, disease, and religious fanaticism. Over time, a bunch of Irish immigrants fought in the American wars and then joined police forces by way of slave patrols and supported segregation. So the result was they were assimilated into whiteness by aligning with white political structure. The Italians. Southern Italians were racialized as darker, criminal, untrustworthy, and non-Anglo. They actually, too, were called the N-word. They faced lynchings. In New Orleans in 1891, 11 Italians were lynched. Now, not near as big of the numbers as Black people were, but how did they get to be white? Well, they gained whiteness by distancing themselves from Black Americans, supporting anti-Black political stances, and marrying into these elitist European groups. All right, Eastern European Jews. Ashkenazi Jews were viewed as non-white. They were Semitic outsiders even well into the 20th century. They were denied country club membership, housing, and top university spots. Many petitioned the U.S. courts to be legally recognized as white to avoid immigration restrictions and discrimination. In fact, in that show on Friday, in the part 2, we're going to talk about a group that petitioned to be white so that they would not go to the concentration camps. And they all won. By the way, they all got to be white. In the court case Dow versus the United States in 1915, a Syrian Christian man was denied whiteness, okay, even though Jewish people were allowed whiteness. In 1909, though, a Lebanese man was allowed to be white. So the court could decide who was white and who wasn't, regardless of their melanin and their ancestry. All right, the Armenians, the Syrians, Lebanese, we just talked about Lebanese, They were denied U.S. citizenship due to not being white. They fought legal cases to be classified as Caucasian, which we'll talk about that in part 2 with Adrienne as well, not because of cultural truth, but due to the literal Caucasus Mountains being where they came from. So they were eventually granted white status in the early 20th century after several court appeals. Okay. Something I want to talk about that never makes sense to me is I call it the Mexican paradox. Okay. And maybe you guys have thought about this before. And it's essentially you're not white until you are, and then you are until you're not. Okay, so let me tell you what I mean. Mexicans, Adric's excited for part 2. Me too. Mexicans are legally classified as Caucasians, with Hispanic marked as an ethnicity, not a race. Okay, so Mexicans are white, they're Caucasian. Okay, this is absurd for 3 reasons. Okay, Spain colonized and brutalized indigenous Mexicans. Okay, the average Mexican is mestizo. This is mixed indigenous and European because of Spain. Okay, indigenous blood is dominant in phenotype and culture of Mexicans, not European. Okay, so why are we calling them Caucasian? Because whiteness is legal. It is a legal fiction. In 1940, the US began classifying Mexicans as white to avoid violating segregation laws, which were black-white binaries, right? To increase the census count, we got a lot more white people, right? And maintain political control over Latin American. Mexicans were white unless they organized or protested, in which case they were treated as non-white. So you guys ought to look up the Zoot Suit riots in 1943 and you will see that. So you see, you're not white until you are, and then you're white until you're not. Because they will still round you up and lock you in a cage to await going somewhere else anytime they want to. Okay. And this always makes me think about Native Americans. Okay. Native Americans are considered a race, but Mexicans aren't. They're Native American. Mexicans are considered white, even though they're Native Americans. And Native Americans are considered Native Americans and not fully white in the place where they're indigenous. So Native Americans are considered a race under US law, but are excluded from whiteness, okay, despite often being lighter skinned than other non-white groups, okay? They were erased through boarding schools. They were not counted as US citizens until 1924, and often misclassified as Mexican, Black, or mulatto in census records. In fact, in all these ICE raids, guess what keeps happening? They keep gathering up Native Americans because they can't tell the difference between a Native American and a Mexican. Why? Because they're both Native Americans. Even tribal enrollment can strip you of certain federal definitions of race. Okay, let me look. Let me look at some comments. Don't forget about Singh in 1919 said he was Aryan. Yes. And then Mexico, Central and South America, shout out to Limpieza de Sangre. Yeah, that's the improving the rate. They want to be white. So there is, maybe that's the answer to the why. And thank you, Adric. Okay, so at the end of the day, whiteness, when they say whiteness is a construct, not a lineage, it absolutely is a construct for most people, because the only lineage that gets to be white are these Neanderthal Gothic elites. And then they can hand out whiteness and then take back whiteness however they want to, because they own it. They made it up. This means blue blood. This means elite, right? Whiteness is not about your DNA, right? Because it's access to resources, proximity to power, ability to assimilate into Eurocentric institutions. It's your willingness to uphold the anti-Black, anti-Indigenous hierarchy. It's a gate, right? It's not a genome. So why does this matter? Okay. Not just about, because it could matter to us, right? Skin tone is still weaponized to today. We all know this. The false unity of whiteness was manufactured to hide the Gothic bloodlines and to obscure indigenous Eurasian and Mesopotamian contributions. Okay. White supremacy equals Neanderthal Gothic caste supremacy, not pan European identity. So all of these people who would never be considered full white, and they're definitely considered impure to these blue blood elites, thinking that they're part of the master race, is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. If you want more information on this, watch the show that I did about Hitler. Okay. If you don't believe me, you can believe the OG white supremacists because they tell you themselves. You want to know the basis of eugenics? Neanderthals were the first Aryans, and Aryans are supreme. That's their thinking, period. They tell you that themselves. Okay. So there are two types of white. Okay. One was born of the earth and adapted over time. Okay. They know, should know, my God, please find out that your heritage is Black. There's none of this weird line and delineation between Black and white in your lineage. It's family, it's ancestry. That's what it is. Okay. That one was born of the earth. One was born and made an empire, right? And it's time we, especially people who consider themselves white, or they are phenotypically white, they get called white, they mark white on the census, knew the difference. It's important to know the difference. All right. Thank you for being with me here today. Oh, just under an hour. Yay. I like the 1 hour time frame. I'm going to show you guys the bonus video, and then I'll show you a picture of my dog. But before I go, I love you, I miss you, and you're my favorite. There's a war they don't talk about. Not a war on land or oil or politics, but a war on awakening. At the center of that war is neuromelanin, the divine molecule, and the tiny light-sensitive gland it guards, your pineal gland. If they can silence it, they can silence you. Neuromelanin is not the melanin in your skin. It is a special form of melanin that exists deep within the brain, particularly in the substantia nigra and locus coeruleus, regions responsible for dopamine production, emotion regulation, and conscious awareness. Neuromelanin binds and detoxifies heavy metals like mercury, lead, and aluminum. It shields neurons from oxidative stress and acts like a black box recorder for vibrational and memory data. This is not just pigment, this is neuroprotective intelligence. Deep within the brain, nestled between the two hemispheres, sits the pineal gland, a rice-sized, light-sensitive organ long regarded by ancient cultures as the gateway to the divine. Ancient references come from Egypt. The Eye of Horus symbolizes the pineal gland's position and power. From India, the Ajna chakra, or third eye, represents spiritual vision, located exactly where the pineal sits. From Rome and the Vatican, the pine cone, symbol of pineal awakening, decorates sacred architecture, including at the Vatican itself. And in the Dogon in Mali, their cosmology speaks of an inner star gate through which beings receive light, a direct nod to pineal activation. Whited cultures with no contact describe the same gland with the same symbolic reverence, because the pineal gland is a resonant light receptor capable of producing melatonin, serotonin, and DMT. It synchronizes the body to cosmic rhythms, and it acts as a portal to higher consciousness, to dream states, and to ancestral memory. If neuromelanin and the pineal gland are gateways to clarity, awakening, and ancestral memory, then disabling them is the fastest way to keep humanity asleep. Here are the methods of suppression. Number 1, pineal calcification. 90% plus of Western adults have a partially or fully calcified pineal gland. This is caused by fluoride, chlorine, calcium phosphate buildup, and heavy metals. And calcification blocks light reception and hormonal signaling. Number 2, melanin disruption. Endocrine disruptors like BPA, phthalates, and pesticides interfere with melanin synthesis. Low copper diets destroy tyrosinase function, which is the melanin enzyme. And UV exposure is discouraged or blocked, preventing natural melanin activation. Number 3, neuromelanin targeting toxins. Mercury in some vaccines and in fillings, lead in old water pipes and paint, and aluminum accumulate in neuromelanin-rich regions. These toxins bind to melanin, disrupting its protective function and killing off dopaminergic neurons. The result? Parkinson's disease, anxiety, depression, and spiritual dulling. All of this while melanin is sold on the market for $300 to $500 per gram. Why would governments and global elites want to keep your pineal gland shut down? Why silence neuromelanin? Because a fully functioning pineal liberates the mind from programming. Neuromelanin connects you to ancestral memory and electromagnetic frequencies. Melanin-rich bodies are more resilient to EMF, radiation, and spiritual manipulation. A melanated, pineal-activated people are much harder to be colonized, commodified, or erased. Control requires amnesia. Neuromelanin is memory. The pineal gland is connection. So both had to be targeted. So how do we protect our neuromelanin? One is astaxanthin, astaxanthin, 4 to 12 milligrams a day. It's an antioxidant that shields brain melanin from oxidative damage. L-tyrosine, tyrosine, 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day. It's a precursor to both dopamine and melanin. Copper, 1 to 2 milligrams a day. It's essential for tyrosinase, the melanin enzyme. B vitamins, especially B6, B9, and B12 for neurotransmitter production. And avoid heavy metals. Use charcoal or fulvic minerals to detox mercury, aluminum, and lead. And of course, talk to your healthcare provider first before you start on any supplements. You can also decalcify the pineal gland. Eliminate fluoride. Use fluoride-free toothpaste and reverse osmosis water. Boron disrupts fluoride calcium binding, about 3 to 10 milligrams. Tamarind is also good to eat. It's a natural chelator of fluoride, and it's from bones and tissues. There's magnesium, which redirects calcium away from soft tissue. Iodine and selenium, they support glandular detox and hormonal balance. You can also awaken the pineal gland with light. Sun gazing at sunrise or sunset to stimulate pineal photoreceptors. Please research it before you do it. Don't just stare at the sun. Practice dark room meditation to increase melatonin and DMT. Listen to 963 hertz binaural beats, which is the pineal tone. Use mugwort, blue lotus, or frankincense on the forehead before sleep. Those are essential oils. Sleep in total darkness with all light sources removed. It does help. Now here's something I can't recommend strongly enough. Eat the sun. Plants don't just make food, they store photons. When you eat living food, you are literally eating sunlight. So the theory is that food grown in direct sun contains more biophotons, light energy packets absorbed and stored via chlorophyll. These biophotons entrain your DNA and stimulate the pineal gland. The more a food has absorbed the sun, the more it fuels your neuromelanin matrix. Melanin interacts with light, so sunlight encoded food is a language your body already understands. So eat foods with sun memory. Blackberries, blueberries, purple kale, those are melanin analogs. How about raw cacao, chlorella, spirulina? Sun-dried fruits, dark grapes, root vegetables grown in the full sun. You are not just flesh. You are memory, light, and vibration. Your melanin is not an accident. Your pineal is not just a gland. It's a beacon. They calcify it to control you. It does make you submissive. They suppress it to disconnect you. But your light is older than the darkness. So clean the lens, feed the brain, and awaken the gate that has been sleeping inside you. Please like the video if you haven't already. It really helps the algorithm to know what kind of things you like. Share where you think it's appropriate, especially to someone who you think needs to hear it. And don't forget to check out some of the wilder Pivot Point Wednesday shows. And last, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you want to break down complex concepts that make the esoteric not so teric, helping you on your journey to become your most authentic self. By subscribing, you'll join a community that thrives on curiosity and growth, and you'll never miss out on insights and some wild discussions. Let's uncover the universe together.